Hello again. Today we're going to take some notes on Chapter 7, Lesson 2 from your book, and this lesson deals with monopolies. You can see I put the game up there. The object of the game of Monopoly is to become the wealthiest player through buying, renting, and selling properties. A monopoly, as we're going to find out in this chapter, is when someone gets complete control of a market and is the only option you have to go to get something. And usually it's something important, because if someone supplies something that's not important, it doesn't really matter if they have a monopoly now, does it? So, plain and simple, it's a market in which there's no competition. One company controls the market. What do I mean by a market? We've talked about this in class before, but if one company has complete control over software or oil or tires or some other commodity that people really need, again, if it's something that people don't want, it's really hard to say you have much of a monopoly over it. So what are the characteristics of a pure monopoly? There are very few pure monopolies around. There may have been some back in the late 1800s when we had a lot of monopolies forming before the government put some controls on those. There are 4 characteristics, though, of what a pure monopoly would be, as they're shown in the book. First one is there is only one seller. That means you only have one choice of who to go to. The other one, or the second one, is that there's no real close substitutes. You can't go to anyone else even for something that's similar. Next one, even if you wanted to get in the market and compete with that one seller, it would be very difficult to get into, and also very difficult for them to get out of. The next one is that there's almost complete control over prices. That is, they can set it at anything they want. Why? Because you have nowhere else to go. And they know that. And I put down here in terms of the hint, it's the exact opposite of pure competition, where there are many sellers. There are a lot of different options in terms of substitutes. Getting into the market and out of the market is very easy, and there is very little control over prices. So, what kind of conditions would you need if you were going to form a monopoly? Well, let's look. First of all, as I mentioned before, you have to control an important resource. It has to be something people need. Think of a product that nobody really wants, like garbage. Although there are people who do things with garbage, recycle it or turn it into some other biomass or something of that nature. It's not really something that most people want a whole lot of. The second one, at least in the United States, the government has to approve of them. And you might ask yourself, why would the government approve of something that gives someone almost total control over prices? Well, we'll get to that in just a second. Sometimes there's a very good reason for why the government would want to see a monopoly. And when we say the government, don't just think of the big national government. City governments are often, and state governments are often the ones who help set up these monopolies or approve of these kind of monopolies. Third condition, they got there first. As new innovations come out and new things come out, invariably there's going to be some companies that get there first, that come up with the idea first. And in some cases they may have a monopoly on a product for a short period of time. Later on, maybe someone else will get on board and start making a substitute. But for the time being, they're able to set prices at almost anything they want because you have nowhere else to go for it. Think about the iPhone when it first came out. There wasn't anything really like it. And pretty soon Androids came out, and while they're not the exact same, they're a substitute that can do a lot of the same things. So, why would the government approve of certain monopolies? One reason is that it may be more efficient to have one company instead of competing companies. A natural monopoly is one where there's not really any competition needed. For example, we don't need a whole lot of competition in Owatonna over who gets to provide public water and sewer. It's not very efficient to have more than one company trying to run that, since the pipes are all connected to the city water supply. It's most efficient to let one company do it. Otherwise, you'd get conflicts over who's got to fix what, who wants to expand what, so on and so forth. So we let Owatonna Public Utilities handle that. And there you go, some of the examples are utility companies, some of the ones that provide gas, water, and electric. In some cases, cities will grant private contracts to companies like cable or phone. I think in Owatonna we still have, well, you can get a choice of satellite. If you want to get cable, your only option is Charter in this town. Now, this is not really a monopoly, but it's something that gives the owner of a company or an inventor sole rights over an invention. So to an extent, it's a bit of a monopoly. What that is a patent. And you may have seen on certain things that something is patented or patent pending. That means someone's in the process of getting it. It's where the government gives an inventor sole rights to an invention. For example, Thomas Edison and his version of the light bulb. He didn't have a patent to be the only person to make light bulbs. He had a patent to make only his kind of light bulb with his specific design. No one else could produce that and make money off it without giving something to Thomas Edison, getting permission to do that. A similar version of this is a copyright. A copyright is something that, if you were to write a book or a song, would give you sole rights to sell or make copies of your work. You could grant people the right to record your song or use portions of your book, but if they do it without asking you, you can sue them. It's something that would protect people from people like Vanilla Ice coming in and stealing some of their riffs, as happened to this young fellow on a song that he sampled. Some of you might remember it, Ice Ice Baby, which he was accused of and found guilty of sampling part of a song by the group Queen, and subsequently had to pay some royalties to them. So why are those important? Especially in our market economy we have in the United States. Inventors or businesses pay a lot of money for their research and invest a lot of time and have a lot of researchers working for them. So they need some time to get that money paid back. If drug companies spend millions of dollars trying to come up with a new medication, and that usually takes years because they have to do studies and trials and things like that, they feel like they need time to earn that money back before sometimes you'll see it turn into a generic version of that pill. And if they don't have to compete with others, at least for a period of time, they're allowed to do that. Copyrights are very similar. A writer's or artist's work is, their creation. They've spent time and they've spent hours and hours, and in some cases a lot of money, trying to come up with that work. So they're entitled to the profits from the sale of that product. Again, you can use their version, but you have to pay them royalties. So if you hear one artist doing a copy of another artist's song, they have to pay some money to use that, even if it's a sample of it. And there's certain lengths of time. If hip-hop artists, for example, are going to use a section of a song, if it goes over a certain length, they have to pay. So those are the main points from Chapter 7, Lesson 2. If you have any questions, as always, please refer to the email below, and I hope you're back soon. Thank you.